It all started with what looked like ordinary food logistics, frozen chicken shipments arriving at a UK warehouse. No suspicious packaging, no false compartments, no alarms, just industrial pallets wrapped and stacked, processed like any other food import. But hidden beneath layers of chicken were bricks of high-purity cocaine, vacuum-sealed and packaged with brutal efficiency. Delivery truck, the smuggling method. Between March and December 2022, a Dutch logistics company made 34 official deliveries to a warehouse unit in Redditch, Worcestershire. On paper, it was a straightforward food shipment. Commercial chicken in cold storage crates. Every delivery had legitimate customs paperwork, clean transit routes, and a routine profile that didn't raise any flags with border or port authorities. But beneath this legal exterior, something far more sinister was at play. Each shipment concealed industrial quantities of cocaine, hidden inside the same crates that held the chicken. The drugs were not placed in secret compartments or modified vehicle panels. Instead, they were simply layered and buried within the frozen meat, stacked like inventory under the assumption that no one would look too closely at raw food freight. Package the scale of the operation. The operation was anything but small. 318 crates of frozen chicken delivered over 9 months, each one containing an estimated 50 kilograms of Class A cocaine. That's 15.9 tons of drugs in total. Street value, £1.59 billion. No elaborate concealment. No high-tech smuggling devices. Just routine commercial deliveries hiding one of the UK's largest ever drug hauls. Ice Cube, why it worked so well. This method succeeded because of 3 major advantages. 1. Legitimacy. The shipments looked completely normal, a common product, moved through trusted channels. 2. Simplicity. Instead of hiding drugs behind complex systems, the method relied on raw volume and speed, using food as the perfect cover. 3. Trust in the system. Customs and port authorities weren't looking for drugs in frozen meat pallets. It was a blind spot in the system that the gang exploited. Locked the Dutch haulers. The drivers and transport companies were unwitting players. They were hired through legal means, had legitimate documentation, and weren't aware of what was really in the back of their trucks. This added another layer of protection, a clean front, impossible to trace back without surveillance or internal leaks. Underscore 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 underscore. In short, this part of the story reveals how one of the UK's most complex drug networks started with something as innocent as chicken deliveries. Through sheer planning and industrial repetition, the gang pushed 15.9 tons of cocaine into the country with no resistance, no alarms, no suspicion, no shootouts. Just boxes in cold storage hiding billions in Class A drugs. At first glance, the warehouse in Redditch, Worcestershire, appeared completely unremarkable. It was just another industrial unit on a quiet trading estate, no flashy signs, no security guards, no reason to raise suspicion. But inside, it was the epicenter of a billion-pound criminal enterprise, a covert drug conversion hub camouflaged within a seemingly legitimate storage facility. The unit wasn't used for storing goods long-term or running any real business. Its sole purpose was to receive cocaine shipments hidden in frozen chicken pallets, strip them of drugs, repackage the bricks, and then send them back out across the UK. Each delivery arrived looking like frozen food, but the process inside turned that innocent cover into something else entirely. This was not a warehouse for distribution of chicken, it was a factory for cocaine transformation. When police finally entered the site in December 2022, they caught Tabrez Hussain in the act, operating a forklift truck surrounded by crates of frozen chicken. But he wasn't moving food for refrigeration or processing. Instead, he was partway through a highly organized extraction process. 1. Unloading the crates from the delivery trucks. 2. Opening the chicken boxes and carefully removing the hidden cocaine bricks. 3. Repacking the drugs into duffel bags, holdalls, or discreet packaging ready for transport. 4. Stacking the now useless chicken to one side, often abandoned or discarded. The operation inside the warehouse was fast. The process of stripping and repackaging was streamlined. Efficient. No high-tech tools, just forklifts, bags, and people trained to move quickly. Invisible. No neighbors noticed, and the unit drew no attention. Deliveries in, drugs out. No traffic, no chaos. Police later described the site as an extraction point, a location purely designed to convert legal-looking food imports into street-ready Class A product. When police raided the warehouse, they discovered dozens of pallets mid-process, cocaine bricks partially unpacked and left exposed, holdalls and repackaging materials, Tabrez Hussain actively working the forklift mid-extraction. No other stock, office equipment, or business materials, confirming it was not a real warehouse. The setup was crude but effective. The gang wasn't using concealed compartments or hidden rooms. The method was blatantly direct. Hide the cocaine in plain sight, extract it fast, and move it before anyone noticed. It was located in a low-profile estate, far from public attention. There were no unusual business activities to alert locals or authorities. The gang ran it with strict control, no loud noises, no extra staff, just trusted insiders. Deliveries were spaced and consistent with legitimate logistics. On December 15, 2022, police surveillance caught a van leaving the Redditch warehouse, filled with 3 large holdalls. That van was later stopped and searched. Inside was 75 kilograms of cocaine, triggering a cascade of raids and arrests that brought the entire network down. The Redditch warehouse was the first major layer of the gang's UK operation. It didn't just store drugs. It converted commercial food deliveries into criminal supply chains. And with Tabrez Hussain at the center, the gang kept things fast, quiet, and ruthless. It was industrial drug trafficking in both scale and efficiency. A quiet home in Leeds. A low-profile man. Yet, he controlled a billion-pound drug empire with military-level coordination. Meet the brains of the operation, Stephen Reyna. At just 31 years old, Stephen Reyna wasn't a flashy drug lord. He didn't flaunt wealth, drive luxury cars, or draw attention. In fact, he operated entirely from the shadows, running the entire UK wing of the operation from a modest semi-detached house on Flaxton Street in Beeston, Leeds. But behind that ordinary front door was the nerve center of one of the UK's largest drug importation conspiracies ever uncovered. Underscore 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 underscore. Joystick his role in the network. Reyna didn't touch the drugs. He didn't drive the delivery vans. He didn't appear in any customs paperwork. His job was far more critical: coordination and control. What he did: manage logistics, coordinated shipments from Redditch to cities across the UK, directed couriers, controlled who picked up what, where, and when, oversaw safe houses, managed drug processing hubs in Beeston and stash flats in Dewsbury, controlled cash flow, oversaw payment routes and movement of millions in street cash, maintained secrecy, operated through encrypted devices, EncroChat-style phones, avoiding detection by not using traceable communication, messaging platforms like EncroChat or similar. These were phones designed for criminal use. No GPS. Self-wiping. No stored contacts. Code-word-based communication only. He never used his real name. Instead, he and his contacts used aliases. One of the most significant was Fendi, believed to be his upstream cartel contact. This alias was traced back to Mexico's CJNG, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, one of the most violent and powerful drug trafficking organizations in the world. Reyna wasn't a global drug boss, but he was trusted by one. Police intelligence indicated he was the UK point of contact for cocaine shipments routed through Europe from Mexico. His job: receive, repack, distribute, quietly and without fail. The method: crates of frozen chicken hiding cocaine bricks stamped with cartel markings. This made Reina a key European hub contact for the cartel's expansion into the UK drug market. Despite staying behind the scenes, Reina left behind a trail of subtle but damning evidence. 1. Fingerprints on packaging and documents found in both the Beeston house and the Redditch warehouse. 2. Intercepted encrypted messages linking him to O. Delivery schedules, O. Courier instructions, O. Payments, O. Communication with Fendi. 3. Dealer lists and cash ledgers recovered with his handwriting. 4. Surveillance that showed him meeting with couriers across cities even after parts of the network had been raided. Reina was clever in how he managed the network. He delegated critical roles to trusted people, mostly family members and tight-knit contacts. He used multiple locations to avoid centralization. His system had layers of separation, meaning one arrest didn't compromise the entire chain. And he stayed mobile, moving frequently between addresses, never staying long in one location. Even after the Redditch warehouse was raided, Reina tried to re-establish the supply chain, contacting couriers and exploring new routes. He kept trying to keep the machine running until his own flat was raided and the final connection was made. The raid on the Beeston house in September 2022 revealed 132 kilograms of cocaine, 35 kilograms of crystal meth, tools for processing and packaging, a dealer lists, his fingerprints on packaging, messages from encrypted phones decrypted and traced back to him. This house, operated by his sister and her partner, became the final nail in the coffin, directly tying him to the cocaine that had been traced back to the Redditch warehouse. In November 2023, at Sheffield Crown Court, Reina was handed 20 years in prison, the longest sentence of the group. The judge called him the orchestrator of one of the most structured drug conspiracies in UK criminal history. Stephen Reina wasn't the muscle, he was the mastermind. He built a low-profile, high-efficiency system to move cocaine from Europe's ports into UK cities. With encrypted tech, cold logistics, and cartel backing, he helped funnel over £1.5 billion worth of drugs into the UK before it all came crashing down. On the outside, it looked like any other modest home, a semi-detached house on Flaxton Street in Beeston, Leeds, nestled quietly among families, schools, and everyday life. But behind that ordinary front door was a fully functioning drug processing hub, responsible for handling millions of pounds worth of narcotics. Inside, Stephen Reina's sister, Sharon Reina, 30, and her partner Liam Harrington, 39, were not simply passive residents. They were key players in the operation, managing and repackaging large volumes of Class A drugs. The house was turned into a cutting and repackaging station, where cocaine and crystal meth were processed for distribution across the UK. The scale was shocking. During a police raid on September 10, 2022, officers discovered 132 kilograms of cocaine and 35 kilograms of crystal meth, with an estimated street value of £19 million. The drugs were not hidden. They were stacked in bricks, wrapped in plastic, and organized with precision. Alongside them were tools of the trade: industrial-grade scales, sealing machines, gloves, and dealer ledgers, all pointing to large-scale preparation. Sharon followed her brother's instructions, overseeing packaging and tracking drug quantities against coded initials, while Harrington assisted with storage and logistics. Their fingerprints were found on the packaging and repacking materials, and data linked their activities directly to the Redditch warehouse, establishing a critical connection in the network. What made it even more chilling was the sheer normalcy of the environment. No signs of criminal activity, no unusual traffic, no red flags for neighbors or authorities. Yet, in this quiet Leeds neighborhood, a £19 million drug processing center operated just steps away from everyday life, serving as a vital node in the largest Class A drug ring in UK history. Tucked away in the Crescent, Ravensthorpe, a quiet residential area in Dewsbury, stood an unassuming ground-floor flat. From the outside, it looked like just another home. No foot traffic, no suspicious behavior, and certainly no signs of a major criminal operation. But behind the door was a critical stash site in the UK's largest drug trafficking network. The flat was controlled by 23-year-old Megan Button, who wasn't the mastermind but played a vital role. She allowed her home to be used as a secure storage point. Her partner, Brandon Mann, a trusted courier for Stephen Reyna, used the flat to temporarily store large quantities of cocaine before they were moved elsewhere. This wasn't a distribution point. There was no street-level dealing from the property. It was purely a containment zone, designed to keep the drugs hidden and safe between handovers. When police raided the flat on October 10, 2022, they found it operating like a mini warehouse. Inside were 58 kilograms of cocaine, valued at approximately £5.8 million, packed neatly into holdalls, cupboards, and plastic bags. The environment was Spartan, almost no furniture, barely any personal belongings, and no signs of daily life, just space, packaging materials, and drugs. Police also discovered that the wrapping and storage materials matched those found in both the Beeston House and the Redditch warehouse, providing further evidence of a centralized operation with distributed nodes. Button's fingerprints were found on the packaging, and surveillance showed her movements, syncing with key delivery days involving her partner. Though young and not a decision-maker, her participation helped keep the cocaine flow intact. This quiet flat in Dewsbury, hiding millions in drugs without drawing a single complaint, highlighted just how deeply embedded and well-insulated the operation had become, a silent but vital link in a vast drug empire stretching across the UK. In any drug empire, the couriers are the arteries, unseen, silent, and crucial. In this case, two men from Scotland played that role with near-perfect discretion: Stephen Gibson, 41, and Darren Hunter, 30, both from Glasgow. They weren't known to police, had no prior drug convictions, and drove clean, unmarked vans that blended into everyday traffic. Their job was simple but vital: transport large volumes of cocaine from the Redditch warehouse in Worcestershire to various destinations across the UK, particularly in Scotland. Using standard vehicles and avoiding flashy behavior, they managed to stay under the radar for months. But surveillance teams had begun piecing together the network, and by December 2022, the noose was tightening. On December 15th, police watched as Gibson's van left the Redditch warehouse, loaded with 3 holdalls. He met with Hunter at a quiet transfer point, where the bags were moved into the boot of Hunter's Toyota Corolla, a routine handoff that had likely been repeated many times before. But this time, police moved in. Gibson's van was stopped, and inside officers found 75 kilograms of cocaine valued at £7.5 million. Minutes later, Hunter was pulled over on the M6, carrying another 40 kilograms, bringing the total seizure to 115 kilograms of cocaine in a single coordinated strike. Analysis of past movements revealed that Gibson had made at least 10 drug runs, moving hundreds of kilos up and down the country, always clean, always silent. Neither man stored drugs at their own addresses. They were professional movers, trusted for their low profiles and consistency. Investigators also confirmed that their communication was encrypted, using Encro-style phones tied directly to Stephen Reyna's network. Though they weren't leaders, their role was critical. Without them, the supply line would stall. Their arrest marked a major breach in the network's logistics and proved that even the most inconspicuous players were part of a meticulously coordinated system to flood the UK with cocaine. At the heart of this vast and disciplined UK drug network lay a chilling international truth: the operation wasn't just British. It was part of a global trafficking pipeline, with direct links to one of the world's most dangerous criminal organizations, the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNG, of Mexico. Inside the crates seized from Leeds, Redditch, and Dewsbury, investigators found more than just cocaine. They uncovered cartel stamps, symbols, and codes consistently marked on the drug bricks. These weren't random logos. They were ownership markers, a clear indication that the shipments belonged to CJNG, a cartel notorious for its violence, control of cocaine supply routes, and ruthless enforcement of loyalty through fear. The UK-based handler at the center of this link was Stephen Reyna, whose encrypted communications repeatedly referenced a figure known as Fendi, believed to be his direct upstream contact within the CJNG supply chain. Though Fendi's real identity remains unknown, police intelligence concluded he was more than a broker. He was the cartel's embedded contact for European operations, and Reyna was his UK point man. Neither Reyna nor his crew had ever traveled to Mexico, and they weren't high-profile players in global trafficking circles, but that's exactly why they were chosen. They were clean, discreet, and efficient, capable of managing enormous volumes without drawing attention. The cartel didn't need soldiers on UK soil, it needed trusted logisticians. The frozen chicken smuggling method, while not invented by Reyna, was a trusted pipeline, and it was Reyna's responsibility to keep it flowing. Every shipment he received was part of a much larger international batch, routed through Europe, pushed into Britain via legal food shipments, and then quietly distributed across cities by van and encrypted text. The cartel markings were more than just branding, they were a warning. This product is ours, and the consequences of betrayal are deadly. This direct connection to CJNG elevated the case beyond national crime. It exposed Britain as a working arm of a brutal, transnational cartel, with Reyna as the critical link keeping that deadly pipeline alive. After months of intense surveillance, wiretaps, and decrypted communications, law enforcement launched their final blow on December 15, 2022. A coordinated series of raids that brought down one of the most sophisticated drug networks the UK had ever seen. The operation had been meticulously planned. Rather than making early arrests, investigators watched and waited, allowing the gang to continue moving cocaine so they could map the entire network, every delivery, every courier, every storage point. On that single day, police executed simultaneous raids across multiple cities including Redditch, Leeds, Dewsbury, and Glasgow. At the Redditch warehouse, officers burst in to find Tabrez Hussain mid-extraction, operating a forklift beside pallets of frozen chicken and holdalls already packed with cocaine. Just hours earlier, surveillance teams had watched a van leave the site. It was intercepted and found to contain 75 kilograms of cocaine. Another vehicle carrying 40 kilograms was stopped minutes later on the M6, leading to the arrests of couriers Stephen Gibson and Darren Hunter. Meanwhile, tactical teams stormed the Beeston house, arresting Sharon Reyna and Liam Harrington, and recovered £19 million worth of cocaine and meth. At the same time, officers raided the Dewsbury flat, uncovering another £5.8 million cocaine stash. By the end of the day, the entire network was exposed, its people, stash points, and encrypted messaging trail. Phones once thought to be untraceable had been cracked and linked to real-world identities. Documents, fingerprints, packaging, and communications connected every seized location back to Stephen Reyna. The police hadn't just seized drugs, they had dismantled a supply chain, pulling apart the gang's logistics, storage, and transport in one coordinated strike. It was the culmination of a long, covert investigation, one that traded speed for certainty, and it paid off with the complete collapse of a billion-pound cartel-backed operation. On November 10, 2023, at Sheffield Crown Court, the gang behind the UK's largest known Class A drug conspiracy stood to face justice. After nearly a year of evidence gathering, forensic analysis, and digital decryption, the prosecution laid out a case described as industrial in scale and ruthless in efficiency. The numbers were staggering. Over 15.9 tons of cocaine trafficked, with a street value exceeding £1.5 billion. The sentences handed down totaled 117 years, led by Stephen Reyna, the mastermind, who received 20 years in prison for orchestrating the entire operation from a quiet Leeds home. His sister, Sharon Reyna, was sentenced to 15 years for managing and repackaging Class A drugs inside the Beeston property. Her partner, Liam Harrington, received a lesser term of 3 years for assisting in processing and storage. Tabrez Hussain, caught red-handed operating a forklift in the Redditch warehouse during a live extraction, was given 17 years. Couriers Brandon Mann and Stephen Gibson were sentenced to 16 and 12 years, respectively, while Darren Hunter received 6 years. Megan Button, who allowed her flat to be used as a cocaine stash house, was handed 2 years. The judge called it one of the most structured and dangerous drug conspiracies ever prosecuted in the UK, stressing that the harm caused by the sheer volume of drugs trafficked was impossible to fully quantify. Yet, in the public eye, the question remains, Was it enough? Considering the billions made, the lives ruined by drug addiction, and the direct link to the Mexican CJNG cartel, some critics argue these sentences, while significant, fall short of the lasting damage inflicted. Others see the trial as a turning point, not just a sentencing, but the first major strike against cartel-backed logistics networks operating on British soil. Whether it was justice served or just the beginning of a much deeper problem remains to be seen.